This is House Education, March 26th, 2026. The committee is working through language on Committee Bill 26-0803. We're really just going to begin with a walkthrough of the language and then figure out next steps. Turn it over to Legislative Council.
Morning, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Council. Just pulling up my own language.
Why don't you go ahead and share your screen, if you would.
So we're looking at draft 4.1. This hopefully incorporates everything we went over last night. If it doesn't, it means I just overlooked it or forgot about it. It was not a on purpose omission.
I'm going to be reading along, so if anybody's wants to stop and ask a question, just do it.
So yellow is changes from the last draft we've looked at, and green is outstanding policy decisions. Basically, the green is dates and any sort of boundaries, whether they be proposed school districts or CISAs. So I think there's nothing in the seesaw language itself. So jump right to see.
Page 7, time change.
It does, page 7.
Shall offer.
Yes, thank you. Shall offer. I think we went over that last time and I forgot to not highlight it.
I suggest that we change the order of those three things and put the union school district creation consultation as number 1.
Without objection.
So.
Why?
Because that's the first job and it comes with things like dates. When you have to have it done by and all of that.
Yeah, this is where I don't think it really much matters what order it goes in. Because they're just offering, it's a menu. So I just want to remind everybody, as things are envisioned, that the CISAs are going to take some time to get up and running. Before then, we're going to have facilitators in the field already starting this work. And then we sort of perhaps need to work on the language of what's the, or not, but what's going to be the sort of facilitator newly created CISA relationship. Yeah, anyway.
I'm not, I agree with the statement that it really doesn't matter what order they're in, but this CISA, these CISAs, which we're mandating, are designed to be a long-term administrative unit that's supporting the field. And I literally see special education as incredibly important to the CISA and the work they're going to be doing. Not to say that the other two pieces aren't important, but when we change the order on the graph, it almost seems like they're not elevating it to the level it needs to be. And I think number 3, which we're all agreeing needs to happen, is going to be a process that's going to come in the net at some point, probably. But the special ed and business and all the other things that may be offered through a CISA, I don't want to, I guess what I'm trying to say, and we do it a better way, the CISA is a really important administrative is going to be supporting a ton of work in our school districts long beyond redistricting. And I don't want to lose sight of that as we're having this conversation.
Might be the one money saving thing that, you do, right?
And I think the need is great, especially, which is why it's on the first three. So not arguing, but
we'll put that in the parking lot to think about for the time being.
Would you like green highlighting to call you back to this section? Okay.
What was the word that was there before offer?
Provide, I think.
Yes, just provide. So we're gonna jump to page 19.
With all the rest of this is just name change.
Correct. Or changes we've already gone over. And we're jumping to page 19 just to get into the CISA, sorry, we should really jump to page 20. The study committee language. So the first change is on page 20, line 11. A facilitator shall have knowledge of and experience working in Vermont's public education system.
So yesterday, Peter, you said Vermont's educational landscape. The difference in language is very different because Vermont's educational landscape is broader than just looking at it through the public education lens. So I think it should be your language from yesterday, not that language.
Yeah, this is a word choice, I think, that Beth may have made for any particular reason.
Because you're forming public school districts. I suppose I did not make it as a political statement. It was more of a practical statement. But technically that is a policy choice you can make.
Yeah, I sort of, as I was looking at this very quickly, I saw that, and, I am, we're wordsmithing here to things that may or may not be particularly important, but I am sympathetic to the idea that this is not about, private childcare. It's not about independent schools, whether they're recognized or approved independent schools. This is about creating school districts. So I guess I would err on the side of being more specific.
Subsection B, study committees, on or before X, policy choice there that we have not ironed out. Each facilitator is required to group school districts within the CSA's member SUs together to form study committees to study the advisability of forming a unified union school district.
So Betsy, one of the concerns I have is up above, it says that the facilitator will be hired by the CISA. We want facilitators out there before the CISA is probably even formed. So the language would have to reflect that.
You need to make a choice
Yeah.
and tell me who would be hiring the facilitator if it is not a CISA. That's not language that I can come up with on my own.
So just for the committee's purposes, one of the challenges that we have here is we would like to have we'd like to have this be fast action. Beth, you got your screen up. So sort of going through the usual state bureaucratic processes takes a long time. So anyway, that's something we're trying to figure out is who can we appropriate money to hire facilitators and get in the field as soon as possible, probably even before the CSAs are up and running. So that's something we're trying to figure out.
As opposed to letting CSAs choose who fits them best as a facilitator.
The problem is that it's speed, not, in other words, the CSAs will take time to create. They're, because they got to come up with their own articles of agreement. They've got to get together and form. They got to figure out the financials. Whereas in the meantime, we would like people out making these conversations happen. Yeah.
the facilitator shall have knowledge of and experience working in Vermont's public education system. Suppose there's someone from out of state who's very knowledgeable of CSAs, and is there a possibility they could fit into this, or do they necessarily need to know Vermont's system if they know CISA systems very well?
So the facilitator is not about creating a CISA. The facilitator is about creating the merger study committees.
So knowledge of a CISA then is not important.
That's right, not as
That would
important
be
as
good
like,
for an executive director.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know we're totally wordsmithing, but what if we just took the public out of there?
Mhm.
Vermont's education system, because in some parts of Vermont, it's not strictly.
But it's paid for by.
But it goes,
They
but it goes
utilize
back
much
to,
more than the public education system for their district.
I guess, we are kind of, what I would say is that, in the case of areas that utilize independent schools to provide at their education with public dollars, that's the public education system that exists in that area.
well, that's why I go back to your words yesterday. I think we're great. Vermont's educational landscape. I think
Yeah,
it fits.
but we really are, this is not a independent school versus not independent school.
I never said it was.
This is about creating public, unified union school districts.
When I think of educational landscape, I'm not saying independent school versus public school. I'm thinking of how each community, each town, each region does education, right? And have that depth of
How
different
they do public
knowledge.
education.
Right, but like what one town needs to do another. So I think educational landscape, right? Even in public education, the landscape is very broad. So that's why I think that wording is better, because you will be able to address things that others may not be thinking, right? Like you might have these big CISA regions here, right? And you may get the persons from down here, but they don't know what's happening all the way up here. So I think just educational landscape, I think is a, like, especially for the
It's a
general
little,
public.
it's a little, ultimately, the right people are gonna be hired with the right depth of knowledge. But this is really about how we educate our students, whether they be a public school or independent school, public. So, I'm more comfortable being clear that we need someone who understands how school boards work, how supervisory unions work, how supervisory districts work. Because that's where the stuff gets really complicated. Let's continue.
Okay, I've made a note that the contract holder for facilitators is a policy choice TBD.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to subsection B, we have on line 15 that call out of their unified union school districts, and I tried throughout to use that specific phrase of unified union school district. If I have missed a place, please don't hesitate to let me know and I will add the unified. Lines 19 and 20, subdivision A. The grouping of school districts to sit on the study committees. The total average daily membership of school districts forming a study committee shall be a minimum of 2,000 students as practical. That's a change. Keeping contiguous, keeping different supervisory unions, keeping the requirement.
Yes, Mr. Contiguous.
That's where I'm going. Can we just remove that?
I'm gonna argue against that. For two things. One, we are trying to create K-12 districts that can operate together in a unified, fully operating system. I find seems to me commonsensely practical that they be contiguous because, trying to create transportation systems and all of that. You know, I think that I'm not sure the advantage of having an errant extra one out here. I mean, we could say, you know, we could say school districts, you know, should be contiguous, but I'm not sure of what the value is of creating a district where somebody's not contiguous.
Again, it goes back to, you know, different cultures around the state, right? Like you could have this layer of towns and districts, this layer in between, but this group is very much like this group over here and how they do things, how their culture, their way of living, way of educating, right? And this might be different. So they could still work together across that line. I mean, you know, but also in its simplest, I mean, taking it out doesn't say they can or can't be. Most of the time they're going to be contiguous. But if there is a reason that they can find as a group together in one of these, you know, the study group, like they can make that decision for themselves if it best fits them. We're taking away something that they can use in their toolbox to decide on if it works for them or not. Most of the time, they're going to say it's contiguous. Is my guess, if not all the time. Wouldn't it be better?
Emily's next. Then Chris.
So I'm in agreement to keep it in, but I will just say, and I guess this is a question for you, Beth, in the process of approval, in the end of the process, in the current language that is existing now and what we're trying to follow here, is there a space for an appeal to the state board of some special circumstance that might arise in the formation of a school district? And I deeply believe the statement you just made, and that is that most of them will be contiguous, but there could possibly in the future be some district who might, and I think we should be confused, but where there might be a school district that has some special circumstance why they want to be part of a district but aren't contiguous. Would there be a process where they could have a conversation?
I think it depends on at what step in the game that happens.
I guess I'm talking about the end final approval.
The final approval by who?
Well, I guess that's a question for you. We haven't gone down through that language.
So
but I was
the
thinking-
formation of a union school district goes study committee,
Yep,
state board approval, voters. So once you get to the voters, there's no appeal. You can't appeal a vote.
right.
I don't know that you need an appeal process. I think if your goal is to allow this is just about the grouping of the school districts
Right.
on the study committee, not what a new school district
Would look
needs to look like.
Okay.
And so
That's helpful. Thank you.
I'm gonna now argue against myself because I'm very good at that. Because, you know, frankly, I can think of one particular circumstance where it's it's Montpelier Roxbury.
I was actually going to just say that.
You know, where a long-running historical tie, not all that long running, but might necessitate that. So, you know, I would be okay with school districts shall be contiguous as practical, something along those lines.
I wouldn't. Well, that's right.
No, that's like, I was gonna suggest something like that. If we make it necessary to be contiguous, are we already hampering the ability for districts to join and create efficiency, which is a big part of what we're trying to do.
I want to flag this for the moment so we can continue on, because Aaron needs to present what we're doing up at Ways and Means at 10:30. So we'll put this as a to be decided and to be thought about.
Yes.
You want to see any language changes for the next draft or just highlight it in green?
I don't know the answer to that question yet.
As much as we can make decisions around timeline things.
Yes.
That is particularly
That's our
what
big-
Ways and Means
Yeah.
needs,
Yeah.
and so
You haven't made any decisions.
Yes, exactly.
That's why.
So let's keep plugging through here. We'll save the contiguous issue for
Yeah.
another bit, another hour.
Okay, I'm gonna, in the interest of time, then I'm gonna skip over anything that's not highlighted, so if you have questions about that, you'll need to stop me. We are, subdivision 3, a study committee is required to adhere to chapter 11, and then the subdivisions that follow subdivision 3, A through whatever it is, are where we talk about some processes that deviate from chapter 11. So, you can see on line 21, I've added unified there. And then, line 21 used to say the feasibility of a contemplated new unified school district, including a regional, middle, or high school, or both. And I didn't like that word choice, so I just used I just changed it to operating, because that's what school districts do. They operate schools. I have,
May I ask why you chose that?
that is what school districts do. They operate schools.
I don't necessarily like the word change.
Talk to him.
Well, we're not gonna wordsmith it, but tuck it away and then explain why you say that.
I need to think it through.
Oh, okay. I understand why that is a more political word choice than I envisioned. We have removed any reference to school district, to school closure. That was the direction, right? Okay. So subdivision DI is, or D little one is highlighted simply to note that D was a subdivision that was something different in the last draft, and that was the school closure language. So that's not in here. I added the unified modifier there to the type of school district. Line 13 is that addition of unified. Line 20 is that addition of unified. Oh, there's a unified on line 15 I didn't highlight. New stuff starting on page 23. So to orient you, we're talking about what needs to be in a report from a school district, from a study committee, if the study committee determines that it is inadvisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district. Adding to that, members of a study committee that determines it is inadvisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district may form a new study committee or committees and may pursue any union school district formation option available under Title 16 after the study committee members vote to dissolve the study committee formed pursuant to this section. I don't think you need this language. I think that is just an option that remains open to them under current law. But if you wanted to dispel any ambiguity about the ability to keep going after they determine that it is inadvisable, then I think you should have some language. And if you don't care if there is any ambiguity, then you can just leave it silent.
I'm fine with keeping it.
So on or before X, each study committee shall complete its final report and transmit it. So this is one of the milestones that's a policy decision. I think it's a policy decision if you even want to put a timeline on there, and then if you do, what is it? So on or before X, each study committee shall complete its final report and transmit it along with proposed articles of agreement as applicable. As applicable because not every study committee will have come up with proposed articles of agreement, but they will all have done a report to the school board of each school district that the report identifies as either necessary or advisable if the study committee determined it was advisable to form a new unified union school district, or to the school board of each school district participating on the study committee if the study committee determined it was inadvisable to form a new unified union school district. Secretary review. If a study committee determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district, the study committee is required to transmit the required report and proposed articles of agreement to the secretary pursuant to 709B. That's current law, but I think it's a nice lead-in to, if the secretary fails to submit the report and proposed articles of agreement with the secretary's recommendations to the state board within 30 days of the secretary's receipt, the study committee shall transmit the report and proposed articles of agreement directly to the state board, who shall then take action regardless of whether the secretary submits a recommendation regarding the proposed school district. When we talked about this option, we didn't talk about who would be submitting, who would make sure that the report and the proposed articles of agreement go to the state board if the secretary misses that 30-day deadline. To me, it makes sense that it's then the study committee that does that. But I suppose technically that is a policy question on whether you just want to direct the secretary to stop work and move that along. It seems cleaner to do it the way I've proposed. Okay. Vote to form a unified union school district. If a study committee formed pursuant to this section determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district, the voters of each school district identified as necessary or advisable shall vote whether to form the proposed union school district in accordance with current law, not later than X. Study committee results report. On or before X, Agency of Education, in consultation with the facilitators, shall submit a written report to the House Committees on Education and on Ways and Means, and the Senate Committees on Education and on Finance with the results of each study committee formed pursuant to this section, including the following information. And this is just stream of consciousness. You can modify this however way you see fit. So we got to have the name of each school district member, whether the study committee determined it was advisable or inadvisable, and the results of the vote to form a new unified union school district. If the study committee determined it was advisable. Oh, there's an errant and on line 21 on page 25 or on 24. And for a study committee that determined it was inadvisable, information on whether any member school district formed a new study committee to study the advisability of forming a union school district that differs from the union school district configuration studied by the study committee formed pursuant to this section. And if so, the status or results of any such new study committee. Later on, you have a report from the facilitators about the details of the study committees. This, I believe, was meant as a kind of a report back on just status of where your study committees are.
So should we fill in some dates there?
I'm sorry, Kate, couldn't hear you.
Should we fill in some dates there?
Well, I think we'll go through this and then, yeah, we only have 2 more pages and then we need to fill in.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Once the region is done, do the facilitators go away or do they?
I got nothing left to facilitate.
Sorry, I wasn't listening.
Go ahead, say it.
Just
That answer.
technical.
And I should have said this is on, I have received the edits back, but I didn't receive them before we went live. So there are typos. Section 13, I've highlighted guidance because it used to say something else. It doesn't get much more policy TBD than this. This is where you are going to have words that represent a map.
That's easier almost than dates. Let's see.
Facilitator reports, impact, influence, and recommendations on or before X. The facilitator, and then we'll change that employed by, depending on policy choice you make about who's holding that contract. Shall submit a written report to the House and Senate committees. None of this has changed. This is about the barriers to formation of new union school districts. What, bless you. Supervisory union and CSA boundaries. This is the report back from the facilitator with recommendations for SU boundary adjustments and CSA boundary adjustments that take into account the new union school districts. And I don't know that that needs to be a facilitator report back. I think that could be state board, it could be AOE, it could be all of them in consultation together.
What about the study?
I mean, you can certainly have the study group make that recommendation. I was trying to have one person responsible for a holistic view of the entire state. I think if you have the study committees recommending this, you're gonna get a bunch of piecemeal recommendations. But you can certainly, whoever is the entity responsible for the report back, you can certainly have them consult with whatever.
This seems to me this is a good AOE report back.
Okay.
Because they certainly should
Do you
be
want-
watching what is going on
Yeah.
and involved.
Do you want to spell out who AOE should consult with, or
Yes,
who should that be?
they should consult with, I would say that about the chairs of each study committee or with the study committee membership. And state board, since ultimately it's the state board that adjusts supervisory union boundaries. And again, I just want to make clear, and we have to make this clear all the time, of course, in this case, when we are talking about supervisory unions, it is the blanket term for any form of the joining of school entities together.
Okay, I've made that note. I've started a funding and appropriation section, which is just a bunch of green X's. So an appropriation for facilitators. You've got to think about how much, where the money's coming from, and who it's going to. Study committee budget grants, same policy determinations. How much, where is it coming from, and who is it going to? And I just have in total green CISA startup appropriation. Because I think we talked about, do we want to modify the current startup grant program? Do we want to have new appropriations? And I didn't have anything in my notes or memory that we landed somewhere. So, okay.
All right, so there's stuff to fill in here, and so we're gonna have to make some assumptions as we talk about timing, right? So let's say this all takes place on July 1st, 2026. Let's say there's an immediate appropriation to an entity that can hire facilitators to go out and do work. When they would then get hired, that's probably all a 6-month process, 3-month process. Anybody want to weigh in here?
On the facilitator?
No.
I don't think great from the timeline.
Yeah. So
That's
yes,
a good goal.
yes, legislative council.
If it is a state entity holding this contract,
Right.
we're gonna have state requirements for RFPs, et cetera. And that timeline takes a while.
Yeah, which is why we're, sort of trying to find an entity other than state, so like we'll we're just gonna try to, if we can avoid the large and slow bureaucracy that is awarding RFPs through the agency, that would be quicker.
Then you'd have to have the CISA formed, correct?
Well, no, because what we're really trying to do is find an entity that can hire the facilitators. Hire 7 facilitators, let's just say, for conversation's sake. They would then immediately go out, report back to whatever the entity is. And sort of be hired by them to start. And then, depending on how the CISAs come together, I think that they would continue to stay in that position until the study committees are formed. I mean, I would like to see this expedited as quickly as possible. When you think about sort of just mandating newer, larger districts, that's also a long process. So is it realistic? Let's say we have an entity. Is it realistic to have a facilitator report, the facilitators report, at least on their status, by the end of December of 2026?
One more time. To have their,
Could we change the effective date on passage?
Sure, it won't make that much of a difference because the governor won't sign it till, by the time we get all through our whole processes, it may be done again, but sure. If it gains a month is a month.
So on the question that you were asking about the timeline in December, I really would like to continue to explore this with field, because field, I mean, facilitators will be facilitating what's happening on the ground. And those conversations with school boards and supervisory unions and administration. I don't want to be unrealistic about the work that's already going on in those districts across the state right now. I feel some sense of pressure to get doing this as quick as possible. But I also recognize that they're under an amazing amount of pressure as the field is already. And even school boards, and I would say that they're probably starting some of these conversations anyway. I keep hearing about, we're starting to talk about the supervisory union next door, I just want to be realistic. I don't think December 31st is off the table. I think that that's a possibility, but it's the study, the formation of the study committee and getting people involved, and it literally is going to have to be talking to communities are on the ground, and at some point we have to be sure.
Could I have you just sort of walk through for us, okay, here's your date, here's your date, here are the dates you need to decide on.
Sure.
As we have.
Yeah.
Do you want me to pull up the language?
Sure, yeah, whatever works.
Okay, I think when I'm not in the hot seat, I can work on a timeline that is consecutive. I think we jump around a little bit in this draft because of different sections.
Right, and we've got parallel sort of things we're trying to accomplish too.
Right.
Creating CSAs and creating merger study.
Oh, do you want to start all the way back up at CSAs, or do you want to stay talking about the school district?
Let's do school districts first.
Okay.
I guess for those of us who are having lunch with the superintendent today, these would be good questions to ask.
So I think your first date is at what point, what's the drop dead date for a study committee to be formed? And then we don't have this in there. I think I flagged it as a potential policy choice and maybe I skipped it or we just didn't really focus on it. But once the study committee is formed, do you want to have a specific date by which they have their first meeting? Because I think those have the potential to be two separate things. What I am trying to think through, and maybe it is being a little paranoid, but I'm trying to think through each place where if you don't put a date, then you have technically someone who does not want to participate in this could just not.
Right.
And so
Although that's possible anyway.
because we cannot control human behavior. Yes. But so I think maybe we add a line in here that talks about the first date of the study, of the first meeting of the study committee. And then assuming this work takes some time, do you want a report back this fall? That's not in here.
This fall.
Yeah. Like, so that you know what's happening in the field. Actually, the AOE, let's see. Study committee status report. Okay, I do have this in here as AOE submitting a written report. This is for the results of each study committee.
Right, no, but I think.
So I think this should be the check back.
Yeah.
Okay. That was probably just me not understanding that the status and then I think it would be a policy choice as to if you want to get prescriptive as to what they need to report back or just an open-ended, like what's the status of all the study committees?
I think if we're talking about this fall, I think it's just going to be status because the status may not be much.
You don't have, this is a total policy choice as to whether you want a status report and when you want a status
The
report.
status report would be important in December for the education committees and everybody to understand the landscape at that point.
You would at least, depending on the date you set for formation of the study committee, at least you would have a report back with what are the study committees,
Yep.
which could be very valuable information. Okay, so I will modify that accordingly. Then do you want a date by which this draft contemplates that, but a date by which the study committees have to have completed their work?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that would be the next date.
Yeah. And does that need to be a date or can that be, within 3 months of their formation kind of?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, so this, we're not going to answer this question right now, but we are going to do some work as to how long should we give a study committee to do its work? Right.
You've already got the timeline trigger for the secretary to do the review. I'm just going to point out that there could be a bottleneck.
Yes.
You've given the secretary 30 days from receipt. If AOE gets 15 recommendations within 2 days of each other,
Yeah.
that's a tall order.
Right. And I think, I'll just say, when I saw that, I thought 30 should be 60.
Yes, me too. Same thing.
That is not a choice I made on my own.
That's in the law.
That is, no, that is what you told me to do.
Okay, so to catch up here, facilitator brings people together. People form a merger study committee. We have that as required. And so we're a little fuzzy on who's required to be there. We're using guidance, which is probably as good as we're going to get. And, you know, some folks may refuse to be part of a merger study committee.
You can't control human behavior, but you do have language in here that says a school district shall participate in the study committee it is assigned to.
Okay. We haven't, but we have a conflict between guidance map and who's assigning anybody to a study committee.
I don't think so. I think it depends on your ultimate goal. The language is here, sorry.
You know, is it a coalition of the willing or is it a?
No, the facilitator makes all assignments. It's totally within, in this draft, and as you have been talking thus far, it is totally and only the facilitator's decision on that initial formation.
Okay.
And the facilitator is empowered to change study committee membership. But it's the facilitator that can change that membership. You know, whether someone cooperates at the table or not, we're not going to be able to control for.
That's right. Right, and the whole thing could fall apart, but it will fall apart within the mandated
Correct.
merger study committee.
And you have the facilitator organizing the study committees as the school district groupings contained in section 13, the guidance map as guidance. And then the further guidance of the 2000, et cetera. So I think this is totally a policy choice.
It is, but I appreciate that, and I'm fine with the great work we've already done.
Should the facilitator seek input from the boards prior to making assignments?
I think that I would hope that would not happen naturally.
Since we're prescribing other things, should we prescribe that too?
Let's keep on dates for the moment. Don't lose that thought.
I won't. We know that.
You want me to keep going in the list or you want
Yeah.
to start? Okay, so we've got, we're at the secretary's review now.
Yeah, we'll just change that to 60.
Just change that to 60. Do you want to give everyone a date by which they need to hold the vote? And some of this is going to, election law comes into play here with like warnings and all of that. And then it's going to depend on when the state board issues
Right.
so we haven't given the state board any timeline here.
Right.
So some of these dates are truly dependent on the policy choice before it.
All right, so what's our next? So how long does the study committee need before it issues its final report? So then we go to the
Secretary.
with a quick review.
And then the state
And the study
board,
board,
we have not given the state board a timeline.
yeah,
So if you require in law a vote to happen and the state board takes longer than you anticipate them to, you're going to have conflicts there.
yes. So the vote should take place it'd be interesting to know what we had in 46 about all this.
Well, there was no timeline. I'm happy to pull up Act 46, but Act 46 didn't cut off people's ability to form union school districts. There was accelerated timelines for incentives.
Right.
That votes needed to occur. And then there was a cutoff date by which the state board could take action, but that cutoff date was the vote had happened or that a union school district was like in process, right? Like maybe the vote hadn't happened yet or there was something happening. So Act 46 still let voluntary things play out on their own timeline. It was the folks who were not going to merge that had the drop dead date. And so, and the time limits on votes were tied to incentives.
Right, so the challenge here, again, is you create a bottleneck with the State Board of Education, which only meets monthly. I suspect they would set up a committee for this. We just say 60 days from receipt, the state board needs to issue a decision.
Sure, you can say that. I have no idea if that's doable.
Then our next step is voters. So hopefully a wrinkle that will occur, which is something that Ways and Means is talking about, is incentives. And so how to the process laid out in chapter 11 that we have today is
I like the idea that a vote has to happen by a certain time if you want the incentive,
right. I totally agree.
but that we don't stop progress if things are moving along, but they're not gonna happen within that time frame.
Right. I think that's the challenge, right? It's the state board bottleneck. So that, you know, if we're saying you got to have your vote by this date, but the state board is the holdup. In order to get your incentives, you need to account for that. So we could have language, I assume, that would say, must hold a vote within 60 days of state board approval.
Yes, let me just double check that there's not already a timeline in.
There probably isn't because there's no incentives at stake here and it's all voluntary.
Series of, it has to be a series of. There's gotta be an information meeting, a 30 to 40 day warning period and that's all.
I would say almost 90 days.
9 days.
Month and like 60.
And you've got folks who need to get on the ballot for initial school district board members
Right.
as well. So I'm not seeing a specific timeline.
So articles of agreement and new board members were voted on at the same time in the Act 46 process. Yep.
So I think you could put anything after 45 days. But then it, from an elections law standpoint, maybe, but the practicality of how fair that is to the field, I can't comment
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, so 90.
Of state board approval.
After state board approval.
Do you want to keep working backwards?
You want to keep working, period.
Do I want to keep working?
No, I said we want to keep working, so backwards, forwards, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Where are we like in the time, like, where are we, like, how far is this timeline
Right,
out right now? Like, so from
You haven't started you haven't made a choice as to when the first study committee meeting.
So we don't have a starting date, so we don't know how.
Yeah, well, but how long,
What we
once,
do,
but
right?
once we start,
Right, where are we
how much time is passing at this point?
before the vote?
So, well, that's because we still haven't made decisions, like, how long does a study committee get
Yes.
to do its work?
Which is gonna be a big one. Because I imagine it's gonna be a significant chunk of time. Gonna need to be.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's again, a question we may take advantage of lunch to ask the field about. All right. So where are we? We just did,
Well, you had a vote. You've now mandated the vote.
yeah,
So the dates after that are related to report backs
okay.
to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that or do you want to go back up to the start?
Let's go back up to the start.
So I suppose the first date would be, is there a drop dead date for hiring a facilitator? None of this starts without a facilitator.
Yes. So hiring facilitators by September 1st, 2026. Just gonna start putting stuff out there and then
It's good, helpful to just have a date.
react to.
Start.
Okay. And then what's the date for the facilitator to have made the study committee groups assignment?
Remember?
Would you say December?
Months? That's 3 months.
Which I think.
The holidays
Let's
are
do 2 months.
months. So it's September.
I mean, these are, the timing's all not great because school districts are in the
Change it.
middle of starting budgets.
Put a number in there and we can adjust it, right? A date it. That's,
So November 1st, November
November.
15th,
so it's
November
November.
30th.
Rob, do you have an opinion? First, November 1st?
Sure.
All right. Give us something to react to.
Do you want?
Yeah, I mean, this, one thing I will say just from the legislative process point of view is, this is the time when we hope our Senate colleagues will be on board and getting more feedback even on the dates.
What about a first meeting date of the study committee?
formed on November 1st, so.
Can you say again what the November 1st date is?
The date by which the facilitator needs to make study committee assignments. I think you can have them be one and the same.
There, yeah, I just think we need to be really clear about that because.
But I think if you don't specify
We would change it.
the date by which a first meeting needs to occur,
That's right.
it could get dicey.
Okay,
Maybe 2 weeks later, same date, month.
so November 1st is
November
what?
1st is both.
This assignment day.
Okay,
And
first meeting.
Okay. That's policy choice. That's great.
Yeah,
Um,
and then I think they would need, let's just say 6 months.
so within 6 months,
4 months, people?
I'm just gonna say, I think all of these dates are ambitious
Mhm.
and I would caution us to be very thoughtful. of This, I know we can change these and we will, and we need to get some feedback. I don't want to send a message from this committee to the field, even before we vote it out of here, that we are setting unrealistic expectations. So I'm just putting that caution in. I just remember the amount of time it takes. I mean, we're talking about citizens in Vermont having to volunteer to be sitting on these things, and it's a lot to have.
Yeah.
Well, and also all of this, as we said before, say again, is during a school year. While they are doing other things as well. Running the current system while having these conversations.
6 months.
In 6 months from now, I think that's ambitious, but
I'm not overly optimistic that many will opt to go in this direction. I'd like to be wrong about that. I think there will be, I think the end result here will be, there will be a couple of things hanging out there. Hopefully incentives and probably a foundation formula that everyone would like to be prepared for. So I hope those will be motivating factors. Period. I guess we'll see. All right, so now we've done 6 months to issue a report.
And then, the reports go to,
And the report includes articles of agreement.
correct, if the report is
Advisable.
advisable. So. Bear with me a second. Um. So, reports and, proposed articles of agreement, we're just gonna focus on the advisable because those are the only ones that have more steps.
Yep.
The report has to go to the school district boards next. And the current law says each board may review the report and proposed articles and may provide its comments to the study committee. The study committee has the sole authority to determine the contents, and to decide whether to submit them to the state board. There's no timeline in there, right? So do you want to build in a timeline for going to, that the report has to go to the school district boards within a certain amount of days and then give the school district boards a certain amount of time with them for the organic process that you are all envisioning for community engagement around the review of the study committee's work?
So I'm just thinking to myself, or is that taking place within the 6-month period that they're working on them?
You have given, the 6-month period is tied to the report.
Yeah.
And the report is then required to go to each school board.
Okay.
And then the law says each board may review the report and proposed articles and may provide its comments to the study committee. That's it.
right, so the question is there a time limit or a timeline for that comment? Is that what you're asking?
No.
Do you want a timeline?
For it to come back? Because
60 days for review?
that seems, wait, well, yeah,
I mean, the whole,
I think I'm.
you see about when they meet.
Absolutely.
And, of course, the whole 6-month process, hopefully they'll take 3 months, but the whole 6-month process will be public.
Right. I'm just saying to get the review, if the school boards want to make comment back to the study committee,
Yeah.
how much time does that board?
Right.
You're saying 60 days?
Yeah.
They may not be meeting.
Then you go to the secretary review. And the secretary has 60 days. If the secretary does not make recommendations within those 60 days to the state board, then the report automatically goes to the state board. So that could be going to the state board sooner, depending on when the secretary transmits it. And then the state board is required, based on our conversation, to issue its final findings within 60 days of receipt of the report, either directly from the study committee or from the secretary, depending on how that transpired.
So I'll just say all these dates are essentially, especially if you tie them to any incentives, they will mean that all of this will meet the bottleneck of both the school boards, the secretary, and the state board. So I'm saying it only, stating the obvious, because there needs to, if we're going to accept that, there needs to be resources and support for
Doing
that to happen. Because there's no question it will all be all at once, because we're setting deadlines to make sure it will, and it's very tight deadlines. So,
Well, of course, the beauty of, legislation is that if it turns out that it's all going quicker or it's all taking longer, dates can be adjusted.
either way, I think that we're still mandating that it all happens at the same time. And I'm not trying to say that's so insurmountable. In the past with Act 46, it was really, it was pretty much anybody could do anything anywhere. And we're trying to put boundaries around it this time so that we have larger catchment areas, which means less reports back. That doesn't mean that's going to happen, but I think in this case, that's what we're trying for. So I think that will help, but there'll still be a lot of information.
You don't have to put dates on any of this. That is a policy
Right,
choice.
And
Okay.
we're making the choice to do.
Okay. I just don't want you to get the impression that I am encouraging you in either direction.
And it's the other way.
Okay. Then you've got 90 days after state board approval to hold the vote. And then after that, current law takes into account all of the transitional processes. You don't need to touch that unless you want to deviate. And the only other dates would be report back dates.
And of course, it just, what we're talking about is support, financial support for this work.
Yes. The appropriations are all policy.
All right, so that was that part. Now we need to talk about CSAs and timing and making them happen.
We have some transition language. Let me find it before I share my screen. You go to page 19, section 11. Current transition language requires within 30 days following the passage of this act, each member SU board of each CSA created in subsection 603A shall appoint a person to serve on the board of directors of the applicable CSA. And then within 45 days following the passage of the act, the superintendent of the SU with the highest aggregate average daily membership of each CSA shall call the first meeting of the directors. And then they are off.
Okay. And that's kind of it that CISA created.
I think so. I mean,
We haven't created bylaws yet or have.
no, they have to do that. That's their work to do. Mhm.
And is that spelled out? Or is that,
Yes, in section,
Very specific.
so in section 603, subsection A lists the membership of the CSAs. And then subsection B addresses bylaws. Each CISA shall establish bylaws to serve as the operating agreement of the CISA. And then you list what needs to be in the bylaws. This is because the statutes are not meant to be for a point in time. They're meant to be in perpetuity. It doesn't say, by a certain date. So if you want to build in a date by which the bylaws have been created, we can just add it to the transition section. Great. So what I did for the transition language is, let me show you. I borrowed from the supervisory union statute. Oh, not that statute. Within 30 days from the date a supervisory union is established by the state board, the secretary shall call a meeting of the school directors of the board together. And then within 30 days thereafter, the secretary shall call a meeting and elect a chair and other necessary officers until the first regular annual election of officers. And there's nothing more prescriptive about what the SU needs to do to get up and running. And so that is kind of the model I borrowed for the CISA language. But you can be as prescriptive or not prescriptive as you want, as far as the milestones your new state created political subdivisions have to meet.
I am not feeling strongly about being any more prescriptive than what we have. I'd sort of forgotten that we already had language that we call BOCES language.
I'm just reading down the state law where it says the directors of the supervisory union board shall serve for 1-year terms.
Where are you? What page am I?
I'm 62 still, chapter 7. I'm back.
Oh, you're in
I'm back
the-
on law.
Okay,
That you
Yep.
were- That you were.
Yep.
And
what
under,
subsection?
under 262C. This feels very much like it's talking about supervisory unions as they're formed today,
It is. This is supervisory union law.
right? Like, I get that.
I didn't borrow this language regarding supervisory unions. The CISA language has its own language about board member terms.
Okay, thank you.
All I borrowed was subsection
I just
A
wanna make
about,
sure that we're not.
Nope.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
CISA member terms are,
Yeah.
persons are appointed annually.
Mhm.
So that's a
appointment,
policy
But it's an
choice.
appointment, yeah, that's fine, yeah, okay, that helps. Appreciate that.
Okay. So. The question that keeps coming to mind is, at what point do we have a complete package? We have, that can take an entity, let's just say a group of districts that want to come together to form a unified union school district of a larger size. And we now created a point A to point B process, understanding that we have not talked about money, we have not talked about incentives, we have not talked about some other things, but absent that, do we now have a full process to go from study committee to newer, larger district, if that's what the voters so choose? I think we do.
Is that a question for me
It
or?
really is a question for you. I just want to I want to know, like, yeah,
I think that is a question for you. Chapter 11 gives you a complete process.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do anything other than say, form these study
right.
committees.
And so we have adopted much of that. So we have the chapter 11 process now in this.
Yes,
language.
so whether you are happy with the deviations you make, the dates you have set.
Right.
That is all a policy choice.
Yeah. But the process is there.
I believe so. I believe so in that chapter 11 is a complete package.
Got
I cannot speak, and I am not speaking to whether chapter 11 should be the process.
Right.
Or whether, the process is complete, meaning.
No, no, I
You see what I'm
understand.
trying to
I do what you're trying to say. Yes,
Okay.
I just want to make sure that, yes. Thank you. Yeah.
We've chosen to use that process and I'm in total agreement with that. I guess, I'll say two things where I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And one is the facilitator and the power of the facilitator to choose who gets in and out. And I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying, I think we need to make sure that we're clear on it. And maybe the more important second item that is of concern for me, and that is that while I recognize all of these dates and the whole package that we're trying to create here is still under development with timeline, I feel really strongly that we need to make sure that we get some feedback from all throughout the field, whether it's the secretary and, through the, superintendents, whatever, the organizations that we often work with to make sure this is doable, because outside of that, we have engagement with Vermonters that has to take place. And as much as I feel intense pressure from the law itself and folks who are trying to keep to it, that moving fast, I also don't want to damage the volunteer work that we're asking Vermonters to engage in this process. So I don't want it to set us back. I want it to be doable. And so that's just keeps pounding my head. And I want to make sure that we're good on that. Good, Josh.
I'm a little frustrated, so I'll try and say this as well as I can. I'd like to cordially ask that we don't say we as a committee when it comes to this, because I don't think there's a we here at the moment. I think there's some, but not all. And I think that there have been, I think there's conversations about like, what does everybody feel? How do we do this? And suggestions from some really get glossed over. So I just would prefer that we don't call it a we bill. We call it whoever votes yes on it or whatever. I don't know.
The way it works, like.
I get it, but I mean, I hear her say we agree on this. I don't agree on some of it.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's, we
I don't-
have not had a vote yet.
So I'm saying I hear we a lot and I don't want people to misconstrue the we as everybody. Okay, thank you.
So you have an issue with pronouns?
Oh my God.
First, you read that there.
All right, I am thinking about what more we can ask of legislative council at the moment. Not hearing much more. So why don't we break? That will get us to the superintendent's luncheon. Which nobody's required to go to, but just want to make sure the option's available for everybody. A good chance for those of us who are there to get a little bit of informal feedback. Let's put on the agenda, we're gonna come back here at 1. Understanding full well that the floor is full of action today, that we need to come back to. Would people like to be on the floor for the first half hour to do their announcements, things like that? Okay, we'll shoot to come back here at 1:15. We will sort of see where we are. We'll have a few more folks here because we have Beth out, these two out.
And it's flying around,
Mhm.
I can slide,
floor time is gonna be.
yeah.
Are we gonna be back down for the amendments as well, or just?
There's nothing to do about it, Fred, that we have to deal with.
No, but it's, yeah, I think you're asking if we're gonna be on the floor to see the amendments.
Are some of the amendments roll calls?
I bet somebody's.
Yeah.
If there's a roll, I guess my question is, if there's a roll call on an amendment, we will be alerted.
As we are here, to the extent that we have things to talk about, Matt will keep a very close eye and tell us what each building is up and what's going on.
Okay.
So people who want to go to the floor, go to the floor. And I'm sure there'll be many roll calls. All right. Everybody okay with that plan? That is the plan then. We'll